Recall that quadratic equations can be written in different forms. The first form we call the vertex form, usually. Second one is the factored form. And the third one is the standard form. Of course, different resources may call them different things, but I'm going to stick to these words. In this video, we're going to concentrate on the vertex form and how we can solve the quadratic equation by using the square root property. Solving quadratic equations can be a little bit tricky. First method we'll use is the square root property, and it's very similar to solving linear equations. Our goal is to be able to isolate the x, or back it up a little bit, isolate the x squared first, and then get x by itself. Let's get started. We want to be able to express our answers exactly. So if you're taking physics and you're rounding answers off with decimals and you're using significant figures, that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to get the irrational simplified answer. First two questions are similar. We want to perform inverse operations to get x squared by itself. In the first one, the inverse operation of subtract is add. What we do to one side, we do to the other. X squared equals 16 is the new equation. To isolate x, we need the inverse of squaring a value, which is taking the square root of both sides. What we do to one side, we do the other. That leaves us an x because the square root of a square cancels. And we're left with plus or minus the square root of 16 because we do have two answers. And we get a plus minus 4. X equals plus 4 or x equals minus 4. Leaving your answer like that is fine, but if you want to show the two values, you can definitely do that. X equals 4, x equals negative 4. Now, if we change the 0 to the y and put the function in Desmos, we would see the x-intercepts match with the solutions, plus or minus 4. For the second one, in order to isolate the x squared, we need to be able to make the coefficient 1. The inverse of multiplying by 6 is divide by 6. What we do to one side, we do to the other. That makes a 1. X squared equals negative 4. Take the square root of both sides. X is equal to the square root of minus 4, plus or minus, and that's not allowed. Because we have index 2, we cannot take the square root of a negative value. The answer is undefined. When you have the square root of a negative 4, you will not get an answer on the calculator. And if we add 24, both sides, we'd have 6x squared plus 24 equals 0. And we'll change that 0 to the y, put it in Desmos, and we can see there are no x-intercepts, no solutions. Next few questions, taking the square root of both sides, x equals plus or minus the square root of 16 over 25. X will be plus or minus 4 over 5. X equals positive 4 over 5 or x equals negative 4 over 5. But leaving your answer like that is fine. For this one, we'll subtract 16 over 25 and then replace the 0 with the y, and we get two x-intercepts, negative 8/10 and 8/10, which is negative 4 over 5 and 4 over 5. We need to isolate the 4x squared, so we'll add 9 both sides. 4x squared equals positive 9. Best practice is to isolate the x squared by dividing 4 both sides. X squared equals 9 over 4. And now we'll take the square root of both sides. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9/4, and that equals plus or minus 3 over 2. For our answer, x is equal to 3 over 2, or x is equal to negative 3 over 2. Don't forget about the denominators. This one's already done. We'll change the 0 to a y and graph. We get negative 1.5 and 1.5. Negative 3 over 2 and 3 over 2 are the solutions, or the roots to the equation, or the x-intercepts of the parabola. Next couple. How about you try? You probably got to that point, but remember I told you, you have to simplify inside here if it's not a perfect square. What we're going to do is break apart 32 to 16. There's the perfect square. So it's 16 times 2. X is equal to plus or minus. The square root of 16 is a 4, and then we have a root 2. We'll have two answers. X is equal to 4 root 2, or x is equal to negative 4 root 2. You could also break the 16 down like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 to the 5. Do you have perfect squares? Yes, you do. You've got 4 times 4. That's your 16. Or sometimes people say 2 2's will come out as 1 2. 2 2's come out as 1 2, and you've got 4. We've also talked about 2 to the 5 with an index 2, and that makes, if this is index 2, we divide the exponents like that. Anyway, whichever way you come up with the way to simplify this 32, do what works. But just remember, you kind of want to get faster. So this is the preferred method. We have 4 times the square root of 2 equals 5.7, and negative 4 times the square root of 2 equals negative 5.7. We'll change the 0 to a y and graph, and we see negative 5.7 and 5.7, which is what we got. Did you try this one? Subtract 5 both sides. 2x squared equals 23 subtract 5, 18. Now divide by 2. That makes a 1. X squared equals 9. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9. X is equal to plus or minus 3. Two answers for that one as well. For this one, we'll subtract 23 both sides, and we get 2x squared minus 18 is equal to 0. We'll put a y in there, graph it. We get negative 3 and 3 as our solutions, x-intercepts. Let's see what happens with this one. Isolate the x squared by adding 8, both sides. 9x squared equals 8. Divide by 9. X squared equals 8 over 9, and take the square root of both sides, plus or minus the square root of 8 over 9. Don't forget about that denominator. And what we see is the square root of 8. 8 is not perfect, so it stays in, but 9 is. So the square root of 9 comes out as a 3. We have x is equal to plus or minus, break apart 8, and it's 4 times 2 is perfect square, all over 3. X is equal to plus or minus 2 root 2 over 3. This square root of 4 becomes the 2 on the outside, and this 2 has to stay in. We have two answers. X is equal to plus 2 root 2 over 3, or x is equal to negative 2 root 2 over 3. And you're certainly welcome to leave your answer like this, or you can write them out like this. It's up to you. And using our calculator, we'd get 2 square root of 2 equals, divided by 3, 0.9, 0.9. And the second one, negative 2 square root of 2 equals, divided by 3, negative 0.9, the two roots. We'll change this 0 to a y and graph it. There's the y. And we get negative 0.9 and 0.9. Now that we've gone through all these examples, see if you can do them on your own without looking. See how fast you can go.